witches and wizards of the world! This is the Hogwarts Chaplain coming to you from the Room of Requirement, broadcasting across the globe on the WWN, the Word and Wizard Network. My friends, in just a few hours, the current Muggle president will deliver his first address to a joint session of Congress. And the Muggle media and the magical media are obsessed with this event. We are also exhausted following all of the mosquitoes from the current Muggle president over the weekend. As is his wont, he sent out all kinds of mosquitoes about things like hating the press, as he continues to call the press the enemy of the people. But his mosquitoes also covered things like weather or the Oscars. Our mosquito net is so full of his mosquitoes of just the last 2 or 3 days, it's hard to know where to begin. But as we have said before on the WWN, we believe this is a strategy of the current administration, that we would be so distracted in the swarm of mosquitoes, the wars of words, that we would not notice actual policies that are being enacted while we are distracted. But here on the WWN, we will not be distracted. And this morning I want to take up just one thing, a real thing that actually happened at the end of last week while we were obsessing on all the mosquitoes about hating the media or about certain media outlets being prohibited from entering a media event on Friday. Yes, in that storm of words about that event, that kerfuffle, you may have missed a piece of news in the financial news on Friday morning. My friends, it was last Friday that I was reading a Muggle newspaper and saw that there was an important, though very small story about for-profit prisons. Yes, these are corporations in America that actually make money by building prisons and taking in prisoners and then charging the state governments or federal governments. For-profit prisons. They had a jump in their stock value on Friday. It's a curious thing. Turns out it is not a curious thing. It is a tragic thing, and it is the result of something that actually happened on Thursday. But before we discuss that sad event, a little history, my friends. Last August, the former Muggle president, Mr. Barack Obama, was the first president in American history to do two things. The first was that earlier in the year, he made the bold decision to take off his tie and jacket and walk on his own feet into a federal prison and to sit in a circle with federal prisoners and talk to them about what? About their lives and, most importantly, their experience of justice. That's what he asked them. What is your experience of justice? Are we living up to our values in America? It does not mean they had not committed crimes, in some case hideous crimes. Some of them were in prison for life without the possibility of parole. But the former Muggle president looked him in the eye and said, "What is your experience of justice?" He felt that the executive of the government should hear from the people in prison. He should go and visit a prisoner. My friends, it just goes to show that that former Muggle president must have read the New Testament and the words of the great wizard Jesus of Nazareth, who said, "Don't go visit prisoners because you love me. Go visit prisoners because I am among them." He said, when you visit prisoners, you are visiting me. When you don't visit prisoners, you are ignoring me. Mr. Barack Obama understood that message, and he decided he himself, despite the Secret Service saying this was not a good idea, went into a federal prison. The result of that visit is that he directed his Attorney General at the time, the Honorable Loretta Lynch. I believe she is a wizard on the inside. She issued a statement, an important memorandum from the Justice Department in August, in which she declared that the federal government would no longer use private prisons. The federal government would do everything it could to stop this industry, and it would begin with the government itself pulling out. The stock prices of for-profit prisons tanked on that day. Sadly, my friends, the day after the election, if you read the same financial press about the prison industry, there was a resurgence of the value in private prison stock. In fact, up until this week, private prisons, since the day after Election Day, have gone up in their value in their stock over 100% on average. Yes, the lights are back on in the for-profit industry and its partnership with the federal government to make money off of people who are in prison. What happened on Thursday? The current Attorney General, a muggle named Jefferson Beauregard Sessions, rescinded the prior memorandum, announcing quietly, amid the storm of other things, that the federal government is now back in business with private prisons. So of course on Friday, the stocks went up again. This is a sad development for justice. And it reminds me of so many of the lessons that witches and wizards learned who read the history about the prison of Azkaban. My friends, there have been a great number of reforms in recent years at Azkaban, but let's be clear about what was good and bad about that prison that you read about if you read the 7-volume series of magical modern history. In the life and times of Harry Potter, what we know, thankfully, is the magical world was never involved with a for-profit prison. The prison at Azkaban was a ministry of the government. Yes, my friends, the Minister of Magic and the ministry ran that prison. No one made money. Families like the Malfoys were not allowed to invest in the incarceration of witches and wizards. No, my friends. And that was an accomplishment, and we should learn from that a strong federal government does not have to have people making money off of people in jail. But there were other problems with the justice system in the magical world, and those are clear if you read the history. One of the problems is there's not really a jury, which affects who winds up at Azkaban. There is the Wizigamot, which is an honorable position for anyone in society, but that's precisely the kind of people who can sit there. People who have been chosen as honorable in society. It is a privileged group of people. Not just anyone winds up there, and they are the ones who vote whether or not someone goes to Azkaban. Another problem you may have noticed in the justice system back in the day is that there is no representation offered to people who are accused of crimes. Even Harry Potter, as a child, had to face the Wizigamot himself. Lucky for him, Albus Dumbledore showed up and was allowed to represent Harry, because Dumbledore. But should that be what delivers justice in a case? That you know Albus Dumbledore? That you know anyone famous with influence? No, my friends. And we know after case, we never see any representation for people who come before that court. And lastly, we must consider the sad story of the family known as the Crouch family. There are great lessons about justice and injustice in the magical world when you consider that family. You'll remember that Barty Crouch Sr. was in charge of wizarding law and wizarding law enforcement. What we know is he was sort of a craven, self-interested politician. And unlucky for him, his son, Barty Crouch Jr., fell in, definitely, with the wrong crowd. He wanted to be a Death Eater. He was enchanted by Voldemort. And he was present at the torturing, using the Cruciatus Curse, one of the unforgivable curses by Bellatrix Lestrange, against Neville Longbottom's parents. And for that, he was brought before his own father on charges of being part of that torture. What we know from Sirius Black, though, is Barty Crouch Jr. was under 18 while he witnessed that crime. It was not even clear exactly how involved he was. And it was, in fact, Bellatrix who bragged her whole life that it was she who tortured the Longbottoms. So yes, Barty Jr. was probably there and a part of it, but he was a juvenile, and he went to court to argue his case before his own father, and according to the accounts that you read, he was crying and screaming, but his father didn't even let him speak in court. His father was so embarrassed and so concerned about his own political career, he wanted to be seen as tough on crime, law and order, and he sent his own son away to Azkaban for life with no representation and no recourse. At 18 years old, Barty Crouch Jr. disappeared to Azkaban to suffer under the depression and the loneliness in a system that put him on an island like an exile forever. My friends, all too often in America and in any Muggle society, this is precisely why people are sent away to jail, not because they are found guilty of their crimes. And even when they are found guilty of their crimes, the people in charge of justice have their own political motivations. They want to be seen as strong. They want to be seen as in favor of law and order. So Barty Crouch Jr. is sent away for life, when in fact he may have been in the wrong place at the wrong time, said Sirius Black. My friends, you all know the story who have read the books, that eventually Barty Crouch Jr. did escape from Azkaban. And what did he do? He went back to Lord Voldemort. And something horrible happened. He took his own part in a scheme to try to kill Harry Potter. He becomes Mad-Eye Moody with Polyjuice Potion. You remember this tragic story. And in the Triwizard Tournament, Cedric Diggory, a youth himself, is murdered as a result of the participation of Barty Crouch Jr. in that crime. My friends, the prison system in the magical world was aimed at dehumanizing its prisoners, that they would become like the Dementors themselves, empty, soulless shells left to die. When your system that is meant to deliver justice does not respect one's humanity, you create people who will not respect humanity. And when Barty Crouch Jr. gets out of prison, the first thing he does is take part in a plot to kill others. Cedric Diggory is an 18-year-old who lost his life, an innocent school student, like so many across this country who are losing their lives in crime. Criminals who have gone through the justice system that did not respect their dignity come out and continue to do to others what was done to them. Cedric Diggory is killed by someone who at 18 was imprisoned unfairly by someone trying to look hard on crime. And it created a cycle where one 18-year-old who did not really receive justice wound up taking the life of another 18-year-old. We see this cycle playing out in America, my friends. This is the problem when you have a justice system that does not deliver justice. And I speak now to the current Attorney General. Sir, you are in charge of a certain ministry of government. You are in charge not of the Department of Punishment or the Department of Law and Order. You are in charge of the Department of Justice. Punishment is not justice. Law and order is not justice. These are means, potentially, to justice. They are not an end in themselves. My friends, the biblical wisdom on this question is clear. We've mentioned before the tradition in the Old Testament and the Jewish community of Jubilee, that every 49 years, criminals, even hardened, guilty criminals, are all set free. And why? Because in the great wisdom of this community that sought to honor God and honor all people created in the image of God, the belief was imprisoning people indefinitely is not only unjust, it is unhealthy for the soul of a society. So every 49 years, all prisoners were released. The jails were empty. And the society began anew in the year after, seeking justice, practicing justice, knowing that 49 years later they would free the prisoners again, not because they had earned their freedom, but because it is unhealthy for either a person or a society to enslave others through imprisonment. My friends in the resistance who are fighting on this particular issue of the mass incarceration of people or the failure of the justice system from the beginning to end, we are with you. Our prayers go with you. You are working on our behalf because the responsibility is for all of us. We are to love our neighbors. If you are an Episcopalian, as am I, we have a baptismal vow to honor Christ in all persons, including people who are in jail, in prison, or on their way, people who've committed crimes. That does not take Christ out of them. The former Muggle president knew this and demonstrated this, and we should follow his example. Visit a jail, visit a prison. You have the rights as a citizen, did you know, to walk through any jail. You must do that. We all must do that. We must be witnesses to whether or not justice is being given, is being honored, is being practiced. That is our call, my friends, and in it, I wish you well. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. and be a seeker.